This is Ian Nethercott. Happy Christmas, Merry Festivus, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever it is that you celebrate, winter solstice, the Druids, whatever it is. And I hope you're having a great end to 2024. 2025 is coming on soon. And this will probably be one of my last interviews for the new interview series for the 2024 season. And I have the pleasure of having John Barrows on. John Barrows? Did I get that wrong?
Barrows, yep.
John
Barrows. Sorry.
Barrows. I messed that one up. Anyway, thanks for taking the time, John. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me on here. I'm a CEO of my own little sales training company here called JB Sales. I've been doing this now for about 15 years. But quick and dirty is grew up here in Boston, went down to Maryland for school, drank my way through 4 years of college, got my degree in marketing because I didn't know what I want to be when I grew up, and then got out and kind of fell into sales like almost everybody else did. Started my career at DeWalt, driving around giving away free tools to construction workers, which was pretty fun. Then I moved up to Xerox copiers. I don't know if that's move up or not, but selling copiers to the government is about as bad as it gets. But that's where I learned how to sell, no joke. And then I started a company doing outsourced IT services for SMB. So a couple of buddies of mine, self-funded, started a company back 2000. No idea what I was doing, so I took every training I could, Sandler, Miller, Hyman, Taz, all of it, and came across this one group called Basho. Loved the training, used it to help grow the company. We were the fastest growing company in Massachusetts for a few years in a row. Got us to about 85 employees, about 12 million in revenue, and then sold off to Staples. Staples then offered me another position. They fired me, and I went off and joined Basho, not because I wanted to be a trainer, because most trainers I had come across either failed sales professionals or professional presenters, and I didn't like them.
Yeah.
But Basho had a unique model where you had to train to sell, or you had to sell to train. And then, so brought on some bigger accounts, took on some bigger ones, and then to make a long story short, they screwed it up and I took it over. So about 15 years ago, went off on my own with JB Sales and took my clients, and I work with companies like Salesforce.com, LinkedIn, Google, Amazon, and all the big fun ones in the tech space. And I train their sales reps on techniques around negotiations, prospecting, you name it. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I think probably the biggest takeaway is I'm a sales rep. So I'm not necessarily a trainer. I'm a sales rep who happens to train. I still sell every day. I got my own quota. I do all my own prospecting. I do all my own negotiations, and I'm back on my own, so having fun doing it.
Fantastic. Well, that's a great Anil. Kind of echoes me a little bit. Started out, went to school for design, industrial design,
There you
not
go.
marketing, but we did a little bit of that. Quickly realized there was no money to be made in marketing at that point, probably still isn't today. And then very quickly fell into sales jobs, both in IT to start, and then I worked in life insurance and logistics and the food business and a bunch of other areas. And then I combined that with my love of cars. So I got into the car business. And then after
Mhm.
doing that, now I work with companies in multiple verticals who sell to industries, including auto. But to me, and I agree with you 100%, there's people that what I would say are sales trainers. And then
Mhm.
there's people who actually have done the job and continue to do it.
Yep.
And they may be good at training salespeople, but they're also good at doing the activity. And I think
Yep.
that's the cautionary tale with some people that maybe used to do it in the past, but are training tactics that are 20, 30 years old. And, I always used to laugh a lot when I first started doing sales training, whether it be Sandler or strategic selling or challenger sale or Pickett. I've pretty
Mhm.
much read every book I can get my hands on. What I found in a lot of it was a lot of the people who write these books write multiple books and just change the name. There's
Mhm.
really not a lot of new stuff there.
Right.
So it was kind of interesting. But when you're dealing with sales forces, and I know there's some in auto selling in finance, they
Yep.
sell in service, they sell in the
Mhm.
sales department, they sell to dealers, being different companies trying to sell to dealerships, different software and stuff. They help dealers sell products, whether it be the OEM, rightly or wrongly, or other products. Um, you know, what's your opinion on, say, a company that has a sales force and maybe, I don't know, isn't satisfied with their production or their ability to sell? Like, what is your opinion of how you start that conversation with that company that says, "Hey, I need help. I want to fix it." Like, how do you start?
Yeah, so it's tough right now because I think your point of training old techniques, right? I mean, I think you used to be able to get away with that because look, quite, I mean, I think one thing that we've gotten away from in the past 10 years is the fundamentals, right? Especially in the tech and the space. Like we've just over-engineered the sales process. We've thrown way too much tech at it, and we've skipped the line a little bit. We haven't taught these kids the fundamentals. And now that selling is a lot harder, money isn't free and everything else, you've seen a lot of reps who are just falling apart, right? Because we used to be able to get away with blasting out template emails, having, generic disco calls and generic demos, and then offering discounts, right? And so now it's tough, and I think there's a legitimate argument to be had, especially with AI. I mean, I knew we were in trouble before AI hit, but then when interest rates, went through the roof, and AI hit in the beginning of 2023, it was like a perfect storm of absolute disaster for sales. And I tell sales reps, if you don't think, oh, AI, whatever, if you don't think you're in trouble, do yourself a favor, go into any chat gpt, any of them, and just pretend like you're a customer, right? So say for me, I'd be like, hey, I'm a 50-person sale, I'm a VP of sales at a 50-person sales teams. I got 20 appointment setters, I got 30 account managers, blah blah blah. That's, I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the JB sales training, tell me what I need to know. Is it good, bad, pros, cons, and how does he compare against the other two competitors? Da, 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 da. And when you realize in a 5-minute conversation with ChatGPT, you get more value out of some sales rep who's going to drone through dumbass Bant questions and a demo, you realize how much trouble we're in. So I think a lot of organizations are realizing this. Like, they've cut the fat to a certain degree, like the total like lazy, sales reps who really weren't adding any value but just filling a seat. And now they're down to a core group, but they're looking at this core group saying, "Man, is this the right group?" Because my numbers, I don't know too many organizations that their numbers are going up and to the right. Let's put it that way, like conversion ratios, connect rates, and all that stuff. So there's a legitimate argument right now to burn the whole thing to the ground and start over with AI native tech and AI native sales reps, quite
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that's the right approach. Because I mean, it depends on what life cycle you're at as a business, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think what you need to do is, my opinion is, take more of a sales lab approach to this scenario that we're all in right now. Because face it, we're all living in a legacy model right now, and we just don't know what the new model is going to look like. And
Right.
so to try to provide a bridge to that, we have to. And so outside of getting back to fundamentals, which I think is critical, I think one of the key things is almost treating your sales org like a sales lab. So it's kind of like engineers, right? When engineers do hackathons and they kind of pick a topic or whatever it is and nerd out on it for a little
Yeah.
while and figure out a solution. I think we should do that with our organization. So like every Friday, for instance, pick some aspect of the sales process. I don't care what it is, whether it's writing better emails, doing better research, preparing for meetings, doing better demos. I don't care, and then break up the group into teams, like the old guard and the new guard, and bring some sales engineers in with you, bring marketing and bring product in, and everybody kind of team up, and whatever the component of the sales process is, everybody gets a couple of hours to figure out a better approach or a more efficient way or whatever that might be, and whoever
Yeah.
wins, right? And then the following week we test that to try out, like, okay, did it work? Like, let's apply this, and then we just keep doing that and keep iterating and iterating and iterating. Because if you're not into an agile structure right now as an organization, you're going to get smoked. Like,
Yeah.
and reps, the last thing I'll say on that is I tell reps all the time, you're not going to get replaced by AI. You're going to get replaced by other sales reps and teams who learn how to use AI. And so that to me is the big piece right now, that if you're not paying attention to it, this isn't like whatever the technology, all technology displaces jobs and it creates jobs. You're wrong. This one's displacing jobs at a rate that's faster than anything you and I have ever seen before. It's
Yep.
learning on top of itself. Google just came out with their quantum chip that does, what our normal computer does in a, quadrillion years or something like that, does it. And they almost now are telling there's a multiverse and all this weird shit. So
Yeah.
like, we are literally right now in the middle of this transition, and you better jump on board right now or you're going to get replaced.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. During the holiday season, I bought a few things that happens this time of year. And what I've noticed is some of these companies, they're trying to do like what Amazon does. And they're trying to like, oh, you bought something, let's give you another
Yeah.
offer. You bought something, let's give you
Yeah.
another offer. And Amazon's getting into the car business with Hyundai starting in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
So that should be interesting. Even Amazon, their Amazon Live or their streaming is the same thing, even the way it's set up. But what I think is going to be interesting, as from a sales rep perspective, putting my sales hat on
Yep.
metaphorically because I already have one on,
Mm-hmm.
is it's how you can leverage your time and focus on the right tasks. I think
Yeah.
the mistake historically that some salespeople made, not all of them, but some people made is, oh, just do the activity. Like do a lot of activity and it's going to get the result. And what I'm finding today, as I've now been in sales for close to 35 years, in that range,
Yeah, me there.
is basically, you know, I do less but more strategically. So
Mhm.
I do less activity, but the activity that I do at a very high level. Whereas before it was like, okay, pick up the phone and call 100 people or send 100 emails or send 100 text messages. And I think that's another mistake that people are making is they think if they can't make a phone call, text will get it done. And that's a mistake. I think you've got to look at, okay, who are the person you're talking to? What do you know about that person?
Mhm.
How can you make that work for them and you? How can you streamline that workflow, whether it be email, text, phone, video, whatever? And how can you do that at a high level so you get the result? And I think that's the challenge for companies that say, hey, I can just replace all my BDRs or SDRs with AI. It's going to get it done. A good buddy of mine, he's in the real estate business. He says, oh, there's all this technology now that will make phone calls instead of salespeople. And I said, okay, well, who's training it? And he goes,
Yeah.
oh, the sales reps. I said, so you're hoping the sales rep trains it right, and then
Right.
you're hoping that robocall AI
Yeah.
doesn't cause a train wreck. I'm not saying
Well,
don't do that. I'm just saying you might want to be a little careful.
Well, especially on the phone side of the house. I mean, look, the phone is like, I think there's actually some laws now that you can't
Yeah,
use AI to make calls here in the United States, other than for like collections and something
yeah,
else. But yeah, I think the danger here is, that is one danger. The one danger of like going back to old school and just pure numbers, right? That died a long time ago, but
yeah,
unfortunately, too many people are still doing it. So the spam model, that's marketing. Let marketing do that, right? But on the flip side of like, oh, let's just replace everything. No, that doesn't work either. At least not yet, quite frankly. And so I think that there's still components where the sales rep adds a ton of value. Is just to your point. It's like all the admin stuff, right? That can be taken care of so that to maximize the time in front of the client. I think
yep,
there's a stat by Salesforce that they always put out this year, report that they do a state of sales, and they always, it's always comes back as pretty similar number. It's like 27-30% of people, or only 27 to 30% of a sales rep's time is actually spent engaging with the client, right? The rest is admin and CRM and all these
yeah,
different things. And I think that's where AI can add a ton of value is like doing the research for me, right? But the problem is so many of these reps, just like everything else, so many of these reps are using it for the easy button, quite frankly, or they're at least trying to use it as the easy button. Where, like, for instance, let's talk about writing an email.
yeah,
I love AI for doing research on you, helping me understand your business, and then even kind of giving me some ideas of how I can tie my value
yeah,
proposition to some of the things, right? But I want to then take that information and write it myself, right? So it's a human writing it, and it goes to you, right? Whereas so many reps are just letting it do the research and write the email and then cutting, pasting, send. Or same thing with like,
yeah,
objection handling. It's like, here's the 10 objections, here's the one you should use, and then and they're basically just reading the script. And to me, if you're looking for AI to automate, I think you're automating yourself out of a job. But if
yeah,
you're looking at it to augment, it's a superpower. I mean, my business acumen has gone through the roof because instead of me spending 45 minutes to an hour researching a company and trying to understand the industry trends and
yeah,
what's going on and how they're aligned, I literally like 3 prompts and it's bing bang boom, and in 2 minutes I got this one-page dossier that tells
yeah,
me everything I need to know about the business. But then I use that information. I learn from it first of all, right? So I consume it to learn,
right,
and then I put some context to it.
yep,
And that's the key. It's like, Gary Vaynerchuk, who, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's
very
kind of
familiar.
crazy. Yeah, all right.
Been a
So,
fan for many years.
yeah, so I met him a while back, and this was back in 2017. And a couple of reps had left Salesforce.com and created this AI bot back in 2017 that was based off of an email that I write. It's a super hyper personalized approach, whatever. And they say, John, we want to show it to you, right? And I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, how good can it be, right?
Yeah,
And what they sent me to, I almost lost them. I like literally, this was back then, 2017. Think about that. 6 years before AI, any of us knew about AI.
yeah,
And I fell out of my chair. It was better and faster than I could have ever written. And so when I met Gary at this little 4D session he has at his office, I said, Gary, I just saw an AI robot write something better, faster than I ever could. I go, where does that leave us as sales professionals? And he said something to me that still sticks with me to this day. He goes, don't worry about the tech. You're not gonna beat it. He goes, but be the last mile. He goes,
Yeah.
let the tech do all the heavy lifting. You know what I mean? Like let it do the research, let it right there. But right before you hit send, right before you make that call, right before you have that meeting, just make sure you personalize it. Make sure you
Yep.
humanize it.
Yep.
Right? Because
100%.
until computers start like once computers start buying, then we're screwed. But as long as there's a human on the other end of that call, that email, that Zoom session, that personal whatever it is, we have a chance. But we got to make sure that we're adding value in every interaction. Period.
Yeah, and you got to know your audience. Like it's funny. There's a lady. I think she's in the advertising space, and I see this all the time from India because they don't know how to do it. But
Mhm.
it's a woman in North America. I think she's out of Manhattan, and I lived in Manhattan many years ago. But she refuses to provide contact details other than email. She believes that sending me more email will get it done, get a
Yeah.
meeting, get me to talk to her, get me to respond, which doesn't work.
No.
And she doesn't learn. So I think part of the issue is, to your point, do the research, know your audience, know the preferred communication, and customize. I'm really taking a page from the, I guess, Pakistan India debacle that
Mhm.
I've seen over many years, where they'll send you a LinkedIn request, they'll hammer you with the sales pitch, and then they'll send you all these emails like, "Oh, did you read my last email? Did you
Right.
read my last
Yeah.
email? No, go away."
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, they they're doing the activity, they're just not doing it correctly. And
Right.
those little nuances make a difference. I mean, I'm using a piece of
Mhm.
AI to help with the research and a few other things. And it's a game changer, not only because you can hyper personalize things, but because you can scale and hyper personalize.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff going on there that will basically replace that 100 dials, if you remember
Mhm.
back in the day. It's it became like an email, a text message, a video, all this stuff you had to do one contact. And
Mhm.
then to your point, then I got to become a data entry specialist. I got to put on my data entry hat and
Yep.
let's get into Salesforce and log everything that no one will ever read,
No. Yeah. Exactly.
which is crushing to a sales rep because sales reps aren't data entry technicians. Like they're not accountants. If they were, they'd be accountants. So
Mhm.
it's kind of interesting when you see that. But when you look at AI components, and I'm looking at things now that are like, they do voiceovers, they do video, they do this, they do that, they do a bag of chips, whatever it
Yep.
might be. And it looks like Grok is now taking on everybody. But
Yep.
when you look into 2025, being that we're
Mhm.
starting a new year, you're going to see companies start to say, okay, I can just replace my whole sales force, or I can just hire
Probably.
a bunch of
Yep.
young people and train them how to work like at McDonald's. Like here's
Mhm.
the process, work the process.
Mhm.
What do you think is the best practice for a company that maybe has a combination of seasoned sales reps and young hires for them to be successful while keeping costs down? Because I think
Yeah.
that's going to be their big question moving into 2025. I mean, what do you think?
So I think that actually the senior reps are going to be in vogue more than the junior reps are because the challenge is, and I'm searching for this answer myself a little bit, and I'll come back to answering your question. But the question I'm trying to answer is, I went to Dreamforce and I saw these agents that they
Yeah.
rolled out, right?
Yeah.
And as soon and I literally walked out of there going, holy shit, like, okay, like where does that leave the sales rep? Because it responds way faster with super personalized stuff. It makes the calls, it tracks this. And they position as augmentation, but I'm like, no, like the reps that I know who do that job, that what I just saw on that screen does it far better,
Yeah.
right? So the question I have is like you and I, we put in our time, right? Like when
Yeah.
I graduated, phone was pretty much the only thing out there. Email was kind of a thing, but it
Yeah.
wasn't really, right? So I'm knocking on doors, I'm writing down shit. I did all this grunt work and this gross stuff, like implement. And as bad as I hated all of it, okay, it made me the sales rep that I am today. And
Yeah.
so it allowed me to be in a position where now give me any type of information, any type of prospect, give me a few minutes to figure it out. And you and I can have a very thoughtful, business oriented conversation. I can be curious about it. I can bring
Yeah.
my business acumen with me, that whole thing, right? But now it looks like a lot of that early stage stuff is going to be taken over by AI, right? So for somebody like me, one of the old guards, it's more about my level of acceptance of adapting to this new technology.
Yeah.
But if you do, you're going to be an assassin because it's going to do all that grunt work that you don't like to do. It's not going to be like, okay, John, you have to make 50 dials today. It's like, no, 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 John, you need to call Ian today because Ian just went on the website. He did this. He posted something about that, and his industry is going in this direction. And by the way, he likes phone over email because da 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 da
Yeah.
da. And
Exactly.
And now I'm going to make that phone call. It's going to record the whole thing, dump it right into CRM, and I'm going to go along my merry day. And I'm going to be able to be maximizing this scenario, whether it's in
Yep.
person or online. The junior reps I fear for because I do because again I look at it and I'm like, again, I can easily right now go into ChatGPT
Yep.
without any customization and get far better, more info, or go on your website of a lot of these tech companies specifically
Yep.
and just start a chatbot and be like, hey, tell me about this, tell me about that. So I think what if you're an organization right now that has that mix, I think you desperately need to pair them up
Yep.
because the younger generation is going to be more adapt to the technology and the older generation is going to have more of the fundamentals. So
Yep.
you almost want like this mentor program to a certain degree where they going back to the sales lab like once a week do something like pick something where the old and the young are playing together here, right? So it's not just like a graduated approach to, a junior and all of a sudden you're a senior rep. It's like, no, these senior reps now need to learn this technology and these junior reps need to learn the fundamentals. So find a way of structuring your organization where you can leverage the best of both worlds and put them into pods, put them into teams, put them into whatever, so that they're learning from each other. And if you do that, not only are you going to figure things out, you're going to increase your employee satisfaction, you're going to increase your attention as well as your results, right? Because they're going to feel like they're collaborating and they're learning and they're part of something. Now, anybody who's not, all those old guard who's just going to rely on their relationships because I'm a relationship guy, this technology, meh, meh, meh. Like I'll give you until the end of 2025 until you're out the door because
Yep.
A, you're an expensive resource for me to keep on track here for your relationships, and B, those relationships are going to be gone because
Yeah.
some kid who figures out how to use this tech is going to be able to add so much more value to that relationship than you ever did. And one day you're going to wake up and that person will be like, yeah, I'll go out to your steak dinner and your golf, but we're going to cancel our contract because I actually don't get any value out of you anymore. I get more value out of this kid who's been coming after me with all these thoughts and ideas and new insights and whatever about my business. And, so you and I can still, play golf if you want, but I'm not going to pay that bill anymore. And I think that's the absolute that's going to happen, in my opinion.
Oh, 100% agree. I mean, when I look at dialing people out of the white pages way back, and I look at
Yep.
the advent of email and then text messages and other things, but what I see is missing is you have number one, you have a reluctance to the most
Yeah.
expensive phone in the universe to use that technology, but also you have an inability for some younger reps to say, hey, I'm going to take the easy road. I'm going to
Mhm.
send the email and the
Yep.
text message and do a LinkedIn communication, but I'm not actually going to think about who that prospect is and how I can take them down a process. And that I think is where the rubber hits the road. I think if you're building AI or whether it's Salesforce or someone else saying, I got this superhuman automated rep, who are
Mhm.
you basing that on? That's the big
Right.
question. And that's the question I have. It's not to say it's a bad idea. I love AI.
Yeah.
I just going, okay, are you duplicating Bob or are you duplicating Frank or is it Jane? Like who are
Well,
you
I think
what are you doing there? Right?
Yeah, and I think this is where like you can, if you're really savvy enough and you've been playing around with some of the technology to date, you can
Yeah,
train it off of the best, right? So like
yeah,
let's use a lot of these call recording tools like Gong and those type of
yeah,
things, right? The theory about Gong from a coaching standpoint is, I can listen to this thing and I can take snippets of the best objection, the best this, the best that, and then put a library together. Now, if you've done that, you can now take that library, put it into AI and create the best coach you've ever had.
right.
And actually, that's where I think AI is going to have the biggest positive impact on sales is frontline coaching.
Yep,
Because let's put it this way, like, managers, right? It's usually a 1 to 10 ratio at best,
yeah,
right? And to do coaching the right way, you got to listen to the whole call. You got to do a ride along. You got to do all these different things. Managers don't have time to do that. They,
yeah,
they end up being deal chasers. They end up just helping close business. But if you can now have on guard, like there's some tools that I'm playing around with where literally it's listening to this call, and then I can create a structure, whether it's Bant or Medic or whatever it is that I want it to listen for. And at the end of the call, it sends me an immediate summary of how I did, grades me, and then breaks it down each category and says, John, you got a 6 out of 10 on this one, a 10 out of 10 on that one, whatever. And
yeah,
then feeds me, oh, you got a 6 out of 10 on developing rapport. John, here's 2 videos on how to develop rapport better. So on your next call. So it's like literally instantaneous. It's based off of like exactly what I'm looking for. So that's why I think AI can have a massive positive impact on the younger generation. Now, the
right.
older generation is probably not going to adopt to that stuff because the ego's getting
Oh,
wet. right? So, and I'm gonna, by the way, I'm gonna put myself in that category. Like who the hell are you to think, right? But I will say, like, I played around with, and when I get off the call, like, look, I've been there, done that for years. I've had the same conversation about sales a million times before. If I, I don't really have to prep for an average conversation. I can usually, I'm dynamic enough. But
Yeah.
man, I've used these coaching tools on myself, and I've let it record and whatever, and all of a sudden it comes back at me and I'm like, God damn, I did forget to dig for, I did forget to, understand impact. I did forget the next step. I did forget. It's like, true shit. Okay. So it's a nice little guard for me as a mirror to my gut that I could always get better. Right. And I think if you don't have the mentality that I'm the king shit here and nothing, then go away. You know what I mean? Like, but if you have the mentality, like, you can always get better, man, AI is going to be a superpower that you can't ignore.
Well, 100% agree. I think the biggest mistake people make as they get older, and I'm not trying to beat anybody up, is they forget that growth mindset. I was talking to
Yep.
a friend of mine last night, happens to be looking for a role, and I said to her, I said, you got to think back to when you were 20.
Yep.
Think back to when you didn't deserve a job, you had to earn it.
Mm-hmm.
And apply that to what you're doing today. And basically, the only thing that I think has changed for me as I've moved from, say, a 20-year-old sales rep to a 55-year-old sales rep and counting
Mm-hmm.
is the problems get tougher. They don't get
Yep.
easier. And I think
Mm-hmm.
the mistake with a lot of people that are seasoned, take that how you will, is they figure they don't have to do anything. Like they're on the top of the mountain. All they got to do is just sort of pass the key down and do it. And the reality is, there's nothing to say you can't be learning every single day, and you should be.
Every
But
day.
more importantly, it's an exciting time to do that. I probably learn more in a day today than I did when I was 20 because A, I'm less distracted, but B, I'm probably less self-medicated with the wrong stuff. So, at the end of the
True.
day, I'm much more focused, and
Yep.
that's a good thing. But the fear, I think, with a lot of reps, whether it be in sales or management, is the rate of change is so fast
So
that
fast.
they're just, they just can't wrap their head around it. I think that's the biggest challenge as we roll into 2025. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it's analysis paralysis. I think that's why actually, one of the books I'm promoting a little bit these days just because of how I think it nails the problem. I don't think it nails the solution, but it's the jolt effect.
Okay.
I've read this one.
I haven't
So this
yet,
is the
but I will.
this is the third. So going back to books that just kind of repurpose, this one's a
Yeah.
little different. This, challenger sale, right? Challenger
Yeah.
sale, challenger customer. Well, this is the third in the succession of that book,
Okay.
right? And basically, what they realized was challenger sale it actually does not work anymore right now. Period. For their own data, and they don't admit that, but I know an
Yeah.
inside source, right? And so that's why they created this because they were seeing like literally an 85% drop in their conversion ratios when using challenger sale, and they didn't know why.
Yeah.
And they extracted, and they because of COVID, and they're now able to listen to millions of calls and analyze them and everything else. They realized that everybody thinks that no decision is the biggest competitor, right? Well,
Yeah.
it's actually yes, and it's actually more indecision now than no decision. And it's getting to your analysis paralysis point. The indecision factor is that the fact of the matter is that things are moving so fast right now. There are so many options for new alternatives. So people are scared to make a decision. They're scared to do anything because nobody got fired for not making a decision. People get fired for making bad decisions. And so that's why you're seeing much more people involved in the decision making process these days. Because it's like, if I'm the quote unquote decision maker, right? And this is going to hang on me. Well, no, it's not. Hey, Ian, I need your eyes on this, man. Hey, Sarah, could you come over and take a look at this? I
Your
just need,
thoughts.
right? So, like
Yeah.
in 6 months, if this thing shits the bed, it's not just me. It's like Ian said yes, right? All this stuff. So the idea of like risk
Yeah.
is the factor here, right? And so now, and it's the same thing with sales reps. It's like I don't even know where to start. Tomorrow something changes. I'm a perfect example of me. When AI came out back in 2023, I knew I was in trouble immediately as a trainer. Immediately. So I'm one of those guys, I don't take a lot of time to make decisions. I usually look at a couple of data points. I'm like, yep, let's go. Let's do it. And I screw up sometimes, but usually it works out right.
Yeah.
It took me over a year to decide on who to work with from an AI standpoint, like to create an AI version of me. And the reason was because every time I'd be like, all right, this is what I want to do. And all right, we're talking to one letter. And all of a sudden ChatGPT would release something. And I'd be like, well, shit, that was exactly what I was thinking. Okay, never mind. Who's the next person? Who's the next person? And even after all this analysis, I made a decision to go with a group. And guess what? They tanked after less than a month because it was moving too fast. So now I've just gone off and I'm just doing it myself. I'm just playing around with GPTs and I'm just feeding
Yep.
my curiosity. But my point is like you got to start. And what I tell everybody, Perplexity is actually my favorite AI tool right now. Um, I tell them right now, just do yourself a favor and switch from Google. Like if you're going to Google something, stop and just start Perplexity. Just start asking the same question to Perplexity.
Right.
Right before you ask your boss a question about a deal that you're working on or whatever it is,
Yep.
you can literally connect your microphone to ChatGPT and just sit in front of it and be like, pretend like ChatGPT is your boss and say, hey, I'm about to walk into a client. This is what I'm a little challenged with this. I'm assuming they're going to do that, and see what it sends you. And when you start to realize, like, holy shit, like, the more you tailor it, the more you learn how to prompt a little bit better. You don't even, by the way, you don't even have to learn how to prompt right now. You just say, this is what I'm trying to do. Give me a prompt that's going to get me the result I want. And it'll write the prompt for you. And then you just cut and paste into it. So it goes back to that growth mindset. You got to get into that growth mindset. And quite frankly, I don't think it's ever been easier. Yes, it's overwhelming. But once you start to just start and you see the power of this thing in front of you that is the greatest coach you'll ever have in your lifetime, sitting literally at your fingertips, and all you need to do is learn how to tweak it and ask the right question, you'll be on your way, and you'll be one of the reps that will at least stay, relevant here for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that 100%. I mean, I've been playing on ChatGPT for a while. I also use Bard to a certain degree, and I also playing around with Grok now and a bunch of
Mhm.
other tools. But it's been a game changer for me based on just having something to help you do what you want to do anyway in a better
Yeah.
way. And I think the fear reaction is a mistake, much like reaction from political class when they don't know what to say, so they just
Right.
say a talking point. Like that's a
Yeah.
mistake. What you
Yeah.
need to do is do your homework and make the right call. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to step on landmines.
Yeah.
There's going to be mistakes made, and I think that's part of the challenge when you look at automation is you got to be very careful what you automate, and more
Yeah.
importantly, you don't want to automate everything and hope it works out. And I think that's
No.
the other thing that is interesting is you've seen these tools baked into software. Like everything now is AI enabled, which
Yeah.
may or may not be a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think the future is bright.
Yeah.
So much
Well,
you have to wear shades, but at the end of the day, it's about how you deal with that. Really, that's what makes the difference.
I think the future is extremely bright for those with a growth mindset and willing to put in the work. I think the future is very dark
Yeah.
for the average person who is going through the motions. Very dark. And the problem is my belief is the vast majority of our population are going through the motions. Like the
Yep.
vast majority. Like 80-20 rule, Pareto's rule, period. I think, and pick an industry, right? Auto, sales, legal, you name it, right? All that grunt work, all that admin stuff that all these people are doing, just kind of NPCs basically going through and clicking buttons and doing their job and getting their salary and not picking their head up because they've been trained to do so. And that's not their fault, by the way. It's just they've been indoctrinated into the matrix effectively. And that's a whole nother conversation we could
Yeah.
have if you want, by the way.
Yeah.
But my point is like for them, I think they're in deep shit. I
Yeah.
really do. But for the 20-25% that's like, ooh, look at this. Let me try this out. Let me make some mistakes. Let me screw around with this and see what happens. I think the opportunities are limitless at this point. Limitless.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I mean, when I talk to my nieces and nephews, the thing that shocks me the most is their inability to wrap their head around this. I remember
Yeah.
talking to my nieces and nephews. One's a medical doctor, just started his residency, and the other two are not sure. Not to poke on idiocracy, but not sure what they're going to do with their life.
Yeah.
I said, you better get sure quickly. And they said, what do you mean? I said, I'm 30 years older than you, roughly, or maybe a little less. But I might have another 25 years working life, maybe, because I'd
Yeah.
probably never retire. But
Yeah.
whatever.
Same.
But you got 30 years of real challenging opportunities, and you're up against a machine that learns faster than you. So you better like get on that bandwagon, strap in, because it's about to be a hell of a roller coaster ride.
Uh,
And if you think you can ignore it, that's a mistake.
You're wrong. Let's put it this way. My daughter, she's a freshman in high school now, and
Yeah,
she's Massachusetts, and she's in a private school, and we
yeah,
were interviewing private schools. And I let my daughter and my wife out, we toured the campuses and all
Yeah.
that fun stuff. And I let my wife and daughter ask whatever questions they wanted to ask. And
Yeah.
I waited until the end and I would ask one question and one question only, which is, where are you on how you're integrating AI into the learning process for these kids?
Yep.
And if their answer was, oh, well, we have a policy against AI, da da da, da, I would literally get
Out.
up and I would walk out the door. I'd be like, thank you very much. My daughter is not coming to your school. Because
Yeah.
if you are not going to teach her on something that is fundamentally going to shift and affect every single thing that she's going to do in her life, I want nothing. I'm not going to spend my money on you to help her learn that. So, or not learn that. And so I think you're right. I like these kids who, I mean, they're already indoctrinated to it in a lot of ways
Yeah.
because of the Snapchats and the tools that they use. They just
Yeah.
don't really understand that it's true AI.
Yeah.
And so, inherently they're gonna know it and leverage it. But it's just kind of like I keep telling my daughter, like, I can't prevent her from being on social media as much as I want to. So
Yeah.
I keep telling her, I go, look, I just want you to use social media. Don't let it use you,
Yeah.
because
100%.
the algorithms are going to force you in whatever direction they want to force you. And if you're an idiot to the algorithm, it's going to take you down paths and you're going to be idiocracy in about a
Yeah.
week. But if you realize that social is a tool and you can build your brand, you can leverage this, you can leverage, then you're going to be in great shape. Same thing with AI. If you let AI do what it's going to do, you're going to get replaced. But if you look at it as a tool and figure out how to use it, you're going to be awesome. And so that's really where right now I think, yeah, the question about, well, what's this going to do, right? I mean, yeah, okay, it's going to displace jobs and create jobs,
Yeah.
just like any other technology. But I just think that the amount of jobs that it's going to displace, and the quickness of it is the speed of it is not going to allow us to keep up with the creation of the new ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 100%.
Like, it's like coal to wind. You know
Yeah.
what it's like coal to so like there's a group that are still holding on to coal, but why not empower those people and get them to learn about, the new, solar and all these different things, right? So that we can educate them into this new world. But if you're going to stick on to coal because that's what my father did and that's what his grandfather did and that type of thing, man, you're going to dig your own fucking grave on this one. And I got no sympathy for you, quite frankly.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, change is happening anyway. Its rate of change is accelerating.
Hmm.
I mean, I started using computer in 1980, but I mean,
Hmm.
even kids who have it, used it from time they could think about it, may not understand it. But the thing that was interesting is lately there's a guy on YouTube. I don't know, I'm trying to remember the guy's name. Anyway, he has this channel where he basically just talks about how to enhance the experience on your devices that you use using settings that you may not be aware of.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was just blown away with all the stuff that these devices do that nobody knows about. Like nobody. Like I'm looking at this and I'm going, what? How did you figure it out? B,
Right.
how much better does it make that device? But C, why isn't anyone doing that? And it was really interesting because it's a microcosm of a microcosm, but it's an interesting one for people that have this attached to their hand like super glue all the time, right?
Right.
So that's really what it comes down to for me is you've got to be ahead of it, but more importantly, and I think Musk says this, you get paid in direct correlation with the value you add.
Yeah. That's a fact.
And I think that's the mistake a lot of people make today is it's like, well, how come you can't pay me $300,000 a year? Well, what value did you add?
Mhm.
I don't know. Okay, well, that's why that guy's making that or that girl, and that's why you're making this. Not saying you couldn't get there, but it's not like I get out of school, congratulations, I'm doing this much money. And
Right.
I think that's the where someone who's in the sales training side really adds a lot of value because you can look at a problem, be it a sales force or a sales individual or a company or a revenue stream or whatever, and solve for that where maybe it's stuff they're not thinking about. So if someone wanted your help, I know
Mhm.
you're a busy guy.
Mhm.
What's that process look like?
Yeah, so appreciate it. So, look, right now, go to jbarrows.com. That's where everything is. So, jbarrows.com. That's where you'll see my content, my training, my free YouTube channel, my webinar, my podcast. I got the Make It Happen Monday podcast, and there's a bunch of resources there. But what I did was I just went back into studio. So, I spent the past 2 months rewriting all my content. And then 2 weeks ago was reset and sat in studio and record all this stuff. This is going to be the last time I do this because I know AI is in the future going to be able to do all this stuff for me. But I think we're still at the moment. I tried with AI to rewrite all my stuff, and then when I read it, I'm like, nope, that ain't me. And one of my big kind of pillars is authenticity. So my audience knows who I am. Now, however, now, and this is actually just a small sidebar here. So went through that process, hours and hours of writing, hours of doing that. Now my video edit guy, my team is like doing just hours and hours of edits, right? All this stuff. So the other night I was like, well, I've heard, now is my downtime of year, right? Because nobody wants to talk to a trainer like we said before. So I got some time to play around with some stuff. So I heard about HeyGen, right? Which is the AI video thing. And I was like, huh. I was like, let me see if I, with very limited AI abilities, I'm very limited editing abilities and that type. Let me see if I can make an AI avatar of me and create a training session with this. Okay. So now I had written everything. Okay. So I got about 130 pages, every single module typed out so I could literally read it. Right. So what I did was I grabbed a glass of whiskey late night one night and I'm just kind of hanging out. I open up HeyGen and I start playing around with it. And I upload a video of me that looks like this, like you're looking at on the screen, and it all of a sudden creates an avatar of me. And when I say an avatar, I don't mean an avatar like like a cartoon avatar. I mean what you're looking at right now. It looked exactly like this, okay?
Great.
And so what I did was I took my welcome script of like, hey, welcome to the JB Sales Filling the Funnel program, and I put it into HeyGen with that avatar. And Ian, if you go on my LinkedIn profile right now, you will see this video. If you have never heard my voice before, you would have no idea that wasn't me. Oh, and by the way, I then took the same one and I changed the language to Spanish in the Spain dialect because there's 10 other versions of
Yeah,
Spanish.
yeah.
And I threw it in there and it looks like I speak perfect Spanish. So my point is that I'm rolling out this whole new platform, which everybody can have access to if they jump on board. It's $420 for the year right now. I'm going to change all the pricing and everybody will get grandfathered in if they want to join it now. They could actually use JB25. If you go to jbarrows.com/individual training, you can use JB25 as part of this podcast and you'll get a 25% discount. So it'll be something like $360 or something like that for the year. And you get everything that I got, every video, every tip, every training, every template. But the cool part about it is I'm now going to use this HeyGen stuff. Once all the high production stuff is done,
Yeah.
I'm going to take that high production stuff, put it into HeyGen, translate it into the top 5 languages that are my demographic, and then relaunch a platform for every single one of those and have a literally Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, you name it. And I'll be able to do it for less than $1,000 in probably over a weekend. I can put it together. And so that's really what I'm working on right now is I'm learning out loud. So what I coined a little while ago is the JB Sales Learning Lab, which is my theory here that I'm not the smart kid out there. I just been around the block for a little while.
Yeah.
And I have access now to some pretty cool people, some people who are way smarter than me, whatever. So what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to learn out loud like everybody else, like with everybody else. So I do workshops, I do AMAs, and I bring people in who are smarter than me. And I'm like, all right, teach me how to do this. All right, let's figure this out. And then I'll write it in my newsletter or I'll show it in my, the stuff that I think is relevant. So it's just more about like staying on top of things here. Whether you want to buy something from me, great. Or you want to follow my newsletter or something like that. I just encourage you to get involved. And as it relates to auto and that type of stuff, to me, sales is sales.
Yep.
And so whether it's face-to-face or online or remote, it doesn't matter. There's some fundamentals that need to be in place and we all got to level up right now or else we're all going to be in trouble.
Understood. Yeah, I mean, I work with a company that's a sponsor of a show called VidCalls, and they're launching in the new year a partnership with a company that's backed by Comcast Cable, where basically it does real-time language translation in 104 languages. So if you were to do your avatar in English, I could have them do this for you, which would be 104 language, 97% accurate. But the thing that's crazy about what they do isn't that. They've in multiple industries, but they started in athletics. So what they did is they started with Major League Baseball and football and this, and they broadcast everywhere in different languages. But what was interesting as they got into the website side of sales is they noticed that in average website, if it's English, about 88% of people, I think it was higher than that, 92% of people. Anyway, at the end of the day, what they found with their technology, and they own a patent on device language prefs, essentially 88% engage if their own language is on the website. And this technology does that. But when I added vid calls to that, which we'll be adding in January, you can then speak to someone in their own language on a video call instantly without having to speak it. And that to me is like the Tower of Babel. It's like the magic freaking rune. It's like something from Star Trek. And that to me, I think is where it's going is
Yeah.
there's nothing to say. I can't sell something to someone in Japan. I don't speak Japanese. They don't speak English. It's all good. And I think that's where we're going. And it's going to be very interesting. I was in China and Japan in 2019.
Mhm.
I remember having a 45-minute conversation with a cab driver. We didn't speak each other's languages.
Yeah.
Was it perfect? No, but it was
No.
a 45-minute conversation.
Yeah.
So that to me was great. Anyway, I think we're out of time today, but definitely if you're not following my buddy here, John Barrows, check out what he does. Obviously, there'll be links below for all these offers that are going on. And sales is sales. I've always believed that. When I get into auto 25 years ago, the reason I got into it was the bar was so freaking low. I was like, I'm going to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
It wasn't my first sales job, but I witnessed it, and I'm like, yeah, people hate this process. It's fixable.
Yeah.
And fast forward 25 years, it's still fixable, but I think AI and process is the way to do that.
Absolutely.
If you're at NADA in New Orleans, feel free to come to the Velo booth. I'm going to be doing interviews the entire show. I will have free hats and shirts, not this one. And obviously, I'll be sending you one when we get them for the show. And then, of course, have yourself a great end to 2024 as we skid into 2025. And I think we're going to be going up an upward trajectory globally. I think it's going to be a very interesting year for a lot of reasons. And thanks for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. Any final thoughts?
Nah, just get out there and make it happen. I really do believe that this is opportunistic. Those people who are willing to put in the work, go get it. But if you're one thinking that this is just gonna kind of slide by and you'll be able to get through this, I'm warning you right now. This one's different than anything else I've ever seen personally. And I've been around for a while. Not as much. I'm about to be 49. Literally next week I'll be 49.
Yeah.
So I'm not. But you and I have seen enough, of this stuff to realize that this is different. And I don't care what anybody says. You got to get on the train right now, or else it's going to run you over.
Well, there's a great book now that we're recommending books. It's called The Rise. It's by Mr. Schwartzman. He actually, and this is, excuse me, a crazy story. He bought a 99-year lease on the World Trade Centers for $3.4 billion. And then 6 weeks later, they came down 9/11. And then he spent the next almost 20 years rebuilding the site.
Oh.
And he did it when he was 70. So what that tells you is, yeah, you can keep getting her done. They thought he was a nut, obviously. But the other quote that really comes to mind recently is a Clint Eastwood quote. No one owes you a goddamn thing. Go out and earn it. And I agree with that 100%. And
Same.
that's what it comes down to. Like, go put in the work. I don't want to hear it. Like, talk to the hand to quote that.
Exactly.
Anyway, have yourself a great day, and I appreciate the time.
Thanks, man. You too. Cheers.